Hello everyone, welcome back. Tim here. I'll talk if you'll listen. Episode 27. I missed you all. I hope you all missed me. And I cannot wait to talk about some of the things that's been going on in my life recently, as well as this week's topic. So a few things to cover there. Also, I'm going to announce the ITIYL gift card giveaway winner. So I'm really excited about that, and thank you all for helping me get to this milestone. Really appreciate it to even do a gift card giveaway. So I'm excited to talk about that. This week's topic is a topic that we talked about briefly in the past. However, we're going to go a little bit more in depth. Stick around. I can't wait to dive into it. I want to take this opportunity to let you guys know that this song it's playing right now was brought to you by a good friend of mine named Joshki. Joshki, out of the kindness of his heart, produced this song for me, and it sounds great. If you want more information about Joshki and his band Glow Stars, check out his Facebook page, facebook.com/glowstarsband, and that's GLO Stars Band. And you can check out some of his information in the description below. Now let's dive into it. This week I have two guests, two listeners who've been listening for quite some time, two friends of mine. One I see every day, one not so much, but still friends. And we talked about the topic of dating with kids. Now, I think the thing that's pretty cool is one of the guests has kids. In fact, he has more than one. So he's talking how it is from the parent's perspective. And then the other guest is dating a young lady who has a kid. So he gets to talk about that unique perspective. And the reason I wanted to talk about this topic a little bit more in depth is I really wanted to bring it to the forefront because there are a lot of memes out there. I'm sure some of you've seen them. There are a lot of topics out there that talk about stepdads and stepmoms that basically says like, hey, if you're not in a relationship right now, you're pretty much going to be a step parent. And the reason for that is a lot of the people your age, especially the ones you went to school with, have kids. It's a reality. Whether the kids were planned or otherwise, they have them, right? And it's a world that you have to be a part of. It's a world that you have to become a part of all of a sudden. And it poses some very real opportunities and challenges for someone who doesn't have kids, just like it does for someone who has kids. So I wanted to really bring a lot of attention on some of the stuff that we already know, right? What is it like for a parent to date? What are some of the things they have to consider? So you'll hear my buddy Anton, aka Sweet Dog. He's a return guest. I had him on a couple episodes ago. So you hear he and I talk, just have a casual conversation on what the dating scene has been like for him. And he brings up some really powerful points that I'm sure you all will really key in on. And I can't wait to discuss it with you all in person and on the interwebs. But he covers some topics and some points that I haven't really quite heard before. So he offers a unique perspective. And I think it's pretty cool because it allows those of us who aren't parents and even those of us who are in relationships, we get to see some of the things, some of the struggles that, parents deal with. And I think it'll help us become a little bit more empathetic to their situation and also help us to become a little bit more insightful. So I'm really excited for you all to dive into that. I can't wait to share some of what Anton has to say. My other guest, Dell, you guys know Dell from some of the feedback he's given to the show and some of the things he's written into the show. Dell was pretty excited to be on, and I can't wait to dive into some of what he has to say. Dell is not a parent, but he is in a relationship with someone who is, and it's definitely was an adjusting period for him. Now, the reason I wanted to have someone like Dell on specifically was because oftentimes, and this is nothing against Anton or any other parent out there, but oftentimes the attention gets directed towards how tough it is for the parent, right? How hard it is for the parent, the things the parent has to go through and trusting people around their kids, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a very real thing. I don't want to diminish that at all. However, there are things that the person who isn't the parent has to go through too. In fact, I was online and I came across I tried to do a little bit of research and a reference to some of the content that I talk about. And I came across this article from the Huffington Post, and it was written a while back, not too long ago, but it was written last year. And I'm not going to go to it in detail. If you want to check it out online, you're more than welcome to. But it covers 10 things for advice for people who aren't parents, dating people with kids. And the things that it gives is point number 1, the kids will always come first no matter what. I think that's pretty obvious. I think anybody getting into a relationship expecting otherwise is a little selfish. However, the other side of that I wanted to point out, because there's two sides to the same coin, right? You have the parent. Absolutely, your kids should always come first. And it's going to be tough to find someone who's willing to be committed to you when they will always be second fiddle, period. And not only will they always be second fiddle, they will never have an opportunity to be the first instrument, if you know what I mean. So there are times where, let's take a traditional relationship, person doesn't have any kids. They're in a relationship with someone. They have an opportunity and experience to see what it's like to be the first person, to be the priority. And then after that, when they do have kids, it's a little bit easier to become to drift into that backseat and take a second role because, you've already, one, that's your child too. And that's another challenge. You're dating someone who their first kid isn't your kid, right? So in this scenario, when you have been dating the person before you two have kids, you have kids together, that's your child, and it's easier to take a role, a secondary role, because you've already experienced what it was like to be the primary interest. When you go into a relationship with a parent, you're automatically starting off at number 2, and there's no way getting around that. And that could be an adjusting period. Point 2 the article makes is the relationship might go slower than you want. And that's very true. The person that's the parent there's an adjustment period, not only for them, but for their child. They have to consider things about their child too. And you'll hear a little bit more about this later on in the interview, but you got to be very careful about who you're bringing your child around. So that's pretty important. Point 3, if the divorce is recent or going on, he or she might seem distant at times. The thing that this one assumes is the person was married. There are a lot of relationships that don't lead to marriage and they just end. And they have a child already before marriage. So that applies to both marriage or otherwise. Point 4, I think, is kind of silly. He or she is busy. I think that's a little self-explanatory. I don't know. I guess they wanted to make 10 points and they were at like point number 9 and like, oh man, I got to add a point there. And they threw it in at number 4. Point number 5, his or her self-esteem isn't the greatest. That's debatable. But the point here is, they may be going through something like, hey, the person that I was with, they don't want me, or hey, they might be insecure about getting out in a dating scene. How many of us know people who run away once they find that the other party is a parent and they have kids and there's kids involved? That can be very intimidating, which we also talk about in the interviews, but that can be pretty intimidating. That's another challenge that the person who isn't the parent has to worry about. You got to worry about looking like a jerk when you don't want to date somebody who's a parent. Again, the argument will always be on the parent's side. So when it comes to dating the parent in the first place, and you talk about like, hey, you know what, this isn't for me, I don't think I'm ready to date a parent yet, you automatically get looked at as like the bad guy or the bad girl, and I don't think that's fair, but it's the reality of it. Point 6 the article makes, be willing to play things by ear a lot. Now, I do agree with this. Things can happen last minute. Every time you go out, potentially the parent needs to pay for childcare or take someone else's time to watch so that they can watch their children. So, you got to be considerate of that the things might be last year. Like, hey, the kids are with, the grandparents or et cetera, et cetera. So you might be able to play things by ear. Also, if you make plans, don't be too discouraged when the plans have to get canceled. There's definitely a middle ground between being considerate to the person that isn't the parent and being considerate to the person that is the parent. You definitely got to be considerate there. It can be one-sided oftentimes, but consideration is a two-way street. Point 7, getting involved in his or her divorce is a huge mistake. Again, this point assumes that the couple was married. But the point here is that, don't get involved with the other person unless it turns violent and you feel like you need to step in to protect somebody. Don't get involved. And when I say protect somebody, I mean when it's at the point where like things get really violent, like the person is showing up, looking to do harm to the parent or their child, definitely, reach out to the police, protect the people you care about, obviously. But if it's something simple like, they said they were going to come and pick up the kids, but they didn't. And now you're mad because of something, don't get involved. You shouldn't have that person's phone number. It just doesn't really make much sense to do that. It can cause a lot of trouble, more for you than for them. And especially if it ends up being a situation where you're not even with the parent anymore. Now you created an enemy and some extra stress that you didn't even need to, Point 8, if you love him or her, you have to love the children too. Now, this is a really tough point, and I think you can tell this article was written by a parent. One point that I want to be really clear is two things can be true. You can genuinely want to get to know the child. You can genuinely love the person that you're with, but it's okay to not share the same feelings to those children that the parent would. I'm really tired of seeing this narrative of making the person who's not the parent, and again, man or woman, making the person who's not the parent the bad guy, this ruthless monster for not being the person who wants kids or wants to be around kids. It's okay. Just like, that parent at one point didn't want kids, maybe it took them becoming a parent to realize the beauty of having kids. Maybe you need to have kids of your own to experience that transition. So it's okay. It's okay if you don't love the children. It's okay if, it definitely is a package deal. It definitely is a situation where you have to be involved in both parties' lives. But at the end of the day, don't feel bad if you aren't overwhelmed with joy or love or compassion for the kids. Just like every emotion, that's something that has to be worked towards. And that emotion isn't going to pop up out of nowhere. You kind of got to get to that point first, So as you can see, this is a really real thing. Now, the downside about this, like with most things in our society, a lot of this is geared towards women. Like if you go and take a look at the statistics, like for example, it said there are 12 million single parent households in the country, and over 80% of those are headed by single mothers. So you'll see a lot of the statistics will specifically call out women and will specifically call out how hard it is for women to date, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I want to be very, very clear that does not mean it isn't true. I don't want to sit here and say it's not hard for women, but I want to say it's also hard for any parent, man or woman. Parents in general. Parents have it tough because they have the child to deal with. And I don't think your gender has much to do with how tough it is on a dating scene. As far as single people go, man or woman, there are a lot of challenges that they have to deal with. Like I talked about earlier, you have to deal with being, the secondary, not the priority, but the secondary person of interest. You have to deal with those times where you have to cope with your emotions in the sense that sometimes you want to hang out and you start to maybe resent the child a little bit, or maybe you start to resent the situation. And now you feel guilty. You feel bad for experiencing a very genuine emotion. It is okay. A lot of people, especially in this PC world, won't tell you that it's okay to feel that way. It is okay to feel that way. Now, what you do with that resentment, that's left up to be judged in the sense of, whatever you do, your actions can be judged. But as far as the emotions and the thoughts, there is nothing wrong with that. Let me be very, very clear. If you find yourself starting to resent the child, if you find yourself starting to resent the situation, if you find yourself starting to get jealous or envious of the situation, one, you need to leave because those feelings are only going to manifest into something more powerful. But two, don't feel guilty. Don't feel ashamed. Don't feel bad. It is okay. That just lets you know it's okay to go outside your box a little bit. Maybe you've only dated people who weren't parents before. And now you're dating someone who is a parent. and it's your first time ever experiencing this. You're going to experience some first time emotions, and it's okay. I hate the world that we live in when it says, hey, positive emotions are okay. When you're happy, when you're joyful, when you're proud, it's okay to broadcast that and embrace those emotions. But when you're feeling jealous or envious, or when you're feeling cynical, that those are negative emotions, and you shouldn't broadcast those. Now, there's some truth in that, in the sense of you shouldn't go to the parent and just say, hey, I hate your kid, obviously. But at the same time, you should embrace those emotions, because just like there's room for, you got to have balance. There's room for positive emotions. There's room for negative emotions. And to sit here and act like you can have one without the other, I think is just silly. So you definitely want to embrace those emotions. So our first guest, Anton, talks a lot about what it's like from the parent's perspective, and he also gives some really good advice surrounding what is for people who aren't parents dating. And he offers a unique perspective because he's a father, as opposed to, we oftentimes hear what it's like for mothers, but he's a father, and, he's currently in a relationship, but he gives some advice and some experiences on what it's been like dating as a father. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Here's Anton, aka Sweet Dog, talking about what it's like to be a parent and in the dating scene.
Sweet Dog, I got you back, man.
Yo, what's up, dog?
Ain't not much,
it's
man.
Boy,
I'm excited.
It's your boy, Little Sweets. It's your boy, Little Sweetie, baby.
I got a celebrity on my line right now.
Yeah? Something like,
man. Well, I'm glad to have you back, man.
Yeah, man.
Not much, man. Just living a life, living the dream. Just came back from therapy.
Yeah, how was that?
And interesting, man. My therapist kind of got on my back a little bit about meditating. He sent me these meditation videos, and they're dope. They really are. I'm just like not committed, man. So he sent me these meditation videos like 2 or 3 sessions ago. And he was like, yeah, look at these will help, with certain things. And I said, okay. Like most people, like I know I want to do it, but then I'll forget. Like I'll leave the therapy session like, oh, I can't wait to do this meditation. This this survey. I can't wait. And then like I'll get home and like, all right, I gotta get ready for work. I gotta get breakfast. And then I'll be here to work like, all right, I got to think about work today. So it's like, I told him, I was very honest with him, because I could have lied and like, oh yeah, I listened to him, Like, what is he, I don't answer to him. Like,
yeah.
But.
Like your pop. But
right.
It's always like with stuff like that, it's like if there's something where it takes like, I don't know, you got to add an hour into your day for that. Sometimes it's hard to just get it started, you know what I mean? Put it into your rotation of things that you do.
Right. And that's what I explained to him. He said, well, hey, look, it's 10 minutes. You can stop by 10 minutes and just set a time. And I said, okay, I'll do it today. He's like, well, get your phone out now. So I got my phone out and I set a time. So actually, when I get off the phone with you, man, is when I'm going to start this meditation, 10-minute meditation. We did a 3-minute one in the session. And it was pretty dope, and it was relaxing. And he said, look, this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. So I just you play how you practice,
Yeah.
Yeah, man. But enough about me. It's time to talk about the celebrity. It's time to talk about you. So as you know, depends on who you ask.
A lot of people will be like, yo, that got the bum. I don't know. So my bad, guys.
No, not at all, man. So I wanted to talk about, get your take on the dating scene, specifically dating with kids. I know you have 2 beautiful children.
Yeah.
And
my son turns 5 on Thursday. Shout out to him.
Oh, look at that.
Damn.
5 years, man.
He's getting old.
Yeah, man. He'll get his AARP membership soon.
Yeah. He can read. Like, bothers me a little bit. I remember when they're real small, you could just, like, change the channel and stuff, and they won't know. Like, right. They won't really be able to tell. But now he's like, he's like, what are you doing? He's like, you're lying. I can see. We're like pulling up to the dentist. He's like, why are we going to the dentist? I don't want to go in there. I'm like, bro, how you know? I'm like, all right.
So it's the question phase.
Yeah. The questions, he's like, I don't know, man. My kid's a jerk. My son's a jerk. He's selfish. He's really selfish. And that's what happens when they get, like, when they start being able to do things by themselves. They start off really team-orientated. And, like, they want to play with everybody. They want to do this. But then the more that they get into their own interests, the more that's all that they're about. So right now, my son's all in the Nerf guns and soda. And really violent, really violent Netflix animes that his mom doesn't know that he's going straight to. Like that's the first thing he goes to. At Fortnite, but he can't really play because he's trash, so he just dies, and he's just like whatever. But the fact that he could turn on my PlayStation, go to Fortnite, differentiate between the mode that you can't play and then the Battle Royale mode, and then start it up, it's crazy to me. So crazy.
I think it's crazy to every parent, man. To see something that you created, something that came out of you.
Yeah, man.
Literally and figuratively. To watch them do these things that we take for granted.
Dog, I used to put him on my chest when he was a week old. I used to hold him on my chest and play NBA 2K13. Just sit there and hold him for hours while I'm sitting there stressed out thinking about what my next move was in life. I'm playing Xbox and now he's playing Xbox. So yeah, it's a little weird. But that's not what we were talking about. What were we talking about? We were talking about dating with kids.
I'm gonna leave all this in.
Yeah, I know. That's my style though. I like the free form. Like I say, you say whatever and you just put it up.
Right. I'll leave all this in.
Less work for everybody.
I agree. And it's nice to see the human side of people, But I wanted to talk about dating. I wanted to talk about dating with kids in particular. You're in a relationship now, but there was a point where you weren't. And you had to get to that point, and you're filling young ladies out. You're dating, whether it's something casual and something fun, purely just sexual, or if it's something like, hey, this is serious. I want to see where this goes, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure there are a lot of things you have to consider as a parent, both not only for you and your kids, but also being considerate of the other person's time. They gotta work their time and their schedule around you and your kids. So what would you say? So leading into the relationship that you're in now, what kind of were some of the obstacles that you had to deal with?
So me and my kid's mother separated basically after the second kid, and she just turned 3. So for the better part of 3 years, or a little bit longer than that, because we were like, you know what? We actually broke up. She left me right when she had got pregnant. So for almost 4 years, I've been single and I've not been dealing with her. So it's kind of easier the older the kids get, because when they're young, and then you're like, oh, I got a kid, and then they're like, oh, that's cool. You got like one kid, and you're like, no, I got these 2 tiny babies that I just got this really serious relationship. It is really difficult to put yourself out there, and so a lot of times you don't even really have the time to, because you're dealing with all these things. But I've had like 1 or 2 actual relationships since, and like the one right after the relationship with my kid's mom lasted like a year and some change. That was pretty serious. I actually really like that girl, but one of the big obstacles is if you do get really serious with someone, you risk the chance of them saying something like, "Oh, I wish I was the one that you had the baby with," and then you're like, "What?" And then they're like, it really bothers me that I'm not going to be our first child won't be your first child, and it took me a while to kind of understand that. Because I don't know, I come from, single parent household, not a lot of half siblings. None of my siblings, we share the same parents. So it never was a big deal to me. But for, some young ladies out here, they were kind of, I guess, jealous with the way that they would describe it. They were like, if you really care about somebody and you fuck with them, and now you sitting here thinking about, excuse my language, by the way, and you're sitting here thinking about how you're not going to be, some experiences, these really intimate experiences, you're not going to share because you guys don't share that experience. It's only one first child. It's only one first son, first daughter. Baby shower, first birthday party. That's very specific. You can only have that one time. But
and I'm sure that's hard.
Yeah, it is.
It's hard for both parties involved because, the young lady wants to have that beginning moment. She wants to experience that, and you can see that she's very envious or conscious of the fact that, hey, this is the person I care about, I want to be with, and one of the things that I look forward to being with this person I can't have. And then you, from being already a parent, I love my kids just the same. I would love my third, fourth, fifth child just the same.
And I'm the
so it kind of
more kids, yeah.
Right. So I can imagine, and I use the word imagine intentionally. I can imagine, both parties having their perception about it and both being right in their own minds,
Yeah. So I've been, and then on the other side, the non-serious side, when you're out here hoeing, like how I've done for a good year, like how I was doing for a good year and a half, you end up feeling, you feel weird sometimes because when you have kids, you already know, it's usually really easy for you to figure out what type of person you want to be with. And you can meet somebody and it could be purely physical and they might not be able, you might be dealing with somebody who's unsure. They'll be dealing with just the physical with you, but then you can tell that they can't really differentiate what's serious and not serious. So then it's just kind of being a dick and just being hey, look, I don't even really have time for what this is. I mean, we had fun together, but me and you don't really click that well on so many other things. And then you end up, not being social for a little bit. Recently, I started dating a girl, very recently, I don't know, 2 months ago. And I asked her, because you always got to let them know really early, oh, hey, I got kids. It doesn't always have to be in the first conversation you have. But, whenever you start talking about your life, really, you got to you can't just, sweep that under the rug. So this girl that I met, she just was like, I don't care. And it's been great because she doesn't. And I really try to talk to her about it. If she comes from a family where all her siblings, same mom, same dad, very old school style family, and her parents are immigrants, and she was just like, yeah, I don't give it. And I was like, what about what your parents think? She's like, I don't give it at all. And it's kind of been making it a lot easier to balance my parent life and my, I guess not personal life, but my romantic life, because now I don't have to worry about offending her or, putting those themes of jealousy or just frustration with that thing in her head.
Right. Well, two things. First things first, I think you're going to, in post-production, make me use a new sound tool to bleep you out. So
use a machine gun.
I never had to do that before.
Yeah, my bad.
Secondly,
I forgot.
Secondly, you're gonna make editing really tough for me, man. But when do you decide to bring that up? The fact that you have kids, because I feel some information can be private. You don't have to. But what's quick? What the first date, the second date? When at one point do you say, "Hey, I have kids"? When
it's usually 2 weeks.
Soon.
2 weeks. Whatever comes first. A couple dates or 2 weeks.
So do you have you ever had the thought in the back of your mind, I met a really fly young lady and I think I might intimidate her and scare her off because I have kids? And
yes.
I think that the opposing argument you'll hear a lot of people, whether it be parents, whether it be young ladies, whether it be young men, they'll say something along the lines, well, oh, if you scared her off, then you dodged the bullet. You're not ready for that anyway. I think that's a little unfair because it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be scared. And if that's intimidating to some people, and they may not know how to deal with that. So, but going back to the question, you said you have had that concern, oh, I'm scared of this young lady.
Oh yeah, there's been a couple of girls that have come in and out of my life that, like, when I first meet them, I'm like, oh, I really like this person. I would love to pursue something. But, you know, sometimes you just know. You'd be like, depending on her situation or what type of person she is, it's like, I don't think she'd be cool with the kids. Because to some women, it's just looked at as drama. Like, oh, he's got kids. That, I mean, he's still messing with his baby, especially like in the black community. Like, he's still messing with his baby mom. You know, oh, why isn't he with them? Is he some type of bum or something like that? And it's definitely like you always have to when you're a young parent and you have two kids. Now I had both my kids by the same mom, so that for some reason that gives me a lot more cool points. Because if like I had two different kids' moms, it's like now I'm a baby daddy and not a father.
Oh, but right, yeah. So many other stereotypes you fall into with that.
Yeah, it's a lot of stereotypes being a young black dude with two kids. So I think that you gotta always let them know that for some reason that you're more responsible than everybody else your age because I have kids. So that's, oh look, I got kids, but I got this good job and you know I work a lot and and then you have to make it. You got to make it very clear early if you're pursuing something serious that whatever reason that you and your kid's mom are separated, it's not because you're like a cheater or something like that. You gotta like for like certain relationship things, you gotta really sell that you're good at them because they'll be like, well, you had this whole family and now you guys are together. So I mean that's another thing.
Have you ever dated? I'm sorry. Have you ever dated a young lady before you had kids that had kids?
Nah, because I had my kids young. I was 19. I was 19 when I found out I was going to be a dad. And I was, you know, I didn't have that much experience with a lot of older women, just girls my age. So, but right after when I had kids, it was like, for a second, it was like it was easier for me to meet other parents, like single moms and stuff, than it was to meet girls my age, you know, who didn't have kids. And it was weird. It was like the consensus from a lot of people was like, you're only going to be able to talk to, you know, single moms now. And I've talked to a few. I talked to a few and they're awesome. And it wasn't a big deal for me, but that definitely seemed like, because once you hit a certain age, it's like now everybody's having kids. I was the anomaly. I had two kids. I was 22. And now it just seems like everybody, you know, you get to mid-20s, get close to 30, now everybody's looking around at each other like, all right, let's pop these out. But
right. So you mentioned you dated other, you know, you dated moms.
Yeah.
And, you know, they of course they have their kids. Does it come with like a comfort factor? Like, hey, are my kids going to mesh well with hers? Does that ever come into play? Or did that ever come into play?
Now, with a lot of the women I talk to, I usually always put off them meeting my kids for a long time. So with the girls that have kids, because you're so protective of them, you're usually like, you gotta pass these tests before, you know, and it goes the same for the men too. Like, you gotta pass these tests before you're allowed around the kids. Now, a lot of the girls that I talk to who had kids already, we never, sometimes we never really got that close. I had one really serious one, but usually, honestly, it was just our schedule that kept our kids from interacting, like our work schedules, because I work weird hours, she worked weird hours, so it was just hard for us to get, you know, all the kids together at once. But other times and stuff, usually, cause especially like kids my age, like they don't be caring about nothing, man. They don't, like they're like, is this person nice? Do they give me snacks? Like, or like what kind of toys does her son have or something? Like that's the type of stuff kids be worried about. They don't really notice anything for a long time.
Yeah, it's not until like subconsciously they do. Just growing up for me personally, you know, like
they gotta be around for a minute.
Right. And this is something that I would be conscious of. I know I've never dated a young lady who has kids, but I've been involved with young women who have kids, and just a kid, never more than one. And I always go back to my childhood growing up, because just like you, all of my siblings, we all have different fathers. Yeah. And I'm the second youngest. So it's my two older brothers than me, than my younger sister. So my younger sister's father was pretty much our stepdad. He was around for quite some time. And then after a while, you know, when it didn't work out between my mom and him, my mom, of course, hit the dating scene again, which she was like used to doing. It was okay. It was like easy for her to do because clearly all of us had different dads. It was like easier for her to kind of like put herself out there. So like subconsciously, not realizing that I started resenting certain things. I'm not going to get super personal over it. A lot of people are going to be listening to this, but there's certain things that in my makeup now, who I am as a person now, because of my mom dated different men, and I would see them come around, and then they would be around, and then they're gone. Yeah. And it wouldn't be for a short period of time. It would be significant amount of time, you know, some cases years. And then next thing you know, another guy would come across. So I would be conscious of that, dating a young lady who has kids, because I don't want to do to her child what my mom did to me.
And that's part of the reason why, you know, you gotta, like I said, pass those tests. You gotta make sure you're going to be around for a minute if you want to be around. If you want to meet the kids, you don't want to be like, oh, I'm just going to be around for like a few months. You want to make sure that, you know, especially if you really like somebody, like, look, I want you to know that, you know, I'm invested. Like, this isn't just a temporary thing for me. So it takes some time to build that trust. And
what advice would you give to someone who doesn't have kids dating someone who does? Because I think oftentimes, I actually mentioned this before in an earlier episode, I think oftentimes it's normal to look at the parent and all of the struggles and difficulties and trials that the parent has to go through, but the person who's not the parent, there's some of the struggles and issues that they have to go through dating someone with kids. It oftentimes gets overlooked, and it almost kind of like has a bad light like shown on it when it's like for example, let's take me or you, especially as men, more specifically, especially as black men, right? Let's say let's say you didn't have any kids. I don't have any kids. Let's say we got involved with a young lady and she did have kids, and then after a while we realized that was too much for us. So we broke up with her for that. And then someone asked, especially if another young lady came across, but someone asked us like, hey, what happened to you and, you know, Jessica? Like, why didn't you and Jessica work out? Oh, she had kids and I wasn't really ready for that, so we had to call it off. People would kind of look at you with a side eye like, wow, really? That's messed up.
Yeah, what do you mean? Yeah. She doesn't deserve love because she has kids.
Right. I think that's kind of unfair for the, you know.
Yeah, sometimes it's their job as a parent that makes you, you know what I mean? Because everybody isn't a great parent. So if you're dealing with somebody, you're like, man, this person kind of sucks. It is kind of whack to be like, yeah, I don't think this is going to work. But you're like, if you usually like, I can see the way you handle that, and adding me to this won't help. So, I might as well just, you know, get out of here.
What advice would you? No, it does. It does. Because the red flag may not just be, you know, hey, kids aren't for me. The red flag could be like the way you're raising your kids. Right. Exactly. Like the way you raise, and
they're raising somebody you're not going to like. And you're like, I'm going to be around. It was this dude. He wrote a book and like these rules to life. And one of the rules is don't make the kids be somebody that you don't like. And if somebody that you're dealing with is doing that, like making a kid that you hate, then it's not gonna work out. You might as well just get ghosts. Not get ghosts, leave like an adult. But my main piece of advice would be to just be patient and be cognizant of scheduling. And if you really like somebody, but they have kids, the time that you have with them, like even if it's just like one day a week or like once every 2 weeks, you gotta let it be known that like you really care about them, and like really be thoughtful about what you're going to do with that time. And it could be a lot of times it could be something small. Like, it was this girl I messed with. She had a son that was a little bit older than mine, and her schedule was really hectic because she worked a lot. So I remember like it would mean a lot to her when like I would just make her dinner. we would just drink tacos and drink, like Tito's and soda or something. And like, she would be happy with that.
The little things.
Yeah, it's the little things, just like actually making time. And, yeah, that's my main thing. It's just like being constant, like scheduling and like, you know, understanding that like, oh, she can't come hang out every day. Like, I can't come hang out every day. Like, you know, she needs to work full time or whatever. I mean, you gotta hope that the other parent in the situation is, you know, is helpful, that like she gets her weekends or they get their weekends, or, you know, or like anything. And for women, you gotta realize too that like a lot of stuff with being a parent as a man is really just coming out of your pocket. Like, cause it's hard. I got 2 kids, so it's hard for me to get both of them, like, to just disrupt their whole setup, you know what I mean? Because they go to school in the Northeast, and I don't live in the Northeast. So, like, I'm usually balancing going back and forth up there to do what they need to do, like, with soccer and, like,
right.
My daughter does ballet. Like, I'm just not as free. And that, you know, that sometimes that bothers people when you just can't be at their beck and call 24/7. If you want someone, you'll make it work. Like, if you really care about somebody, you'll be able to make it work. But that really something you got to get used to.
It really brings out your character. I'll tell you that much on both ends.
I mean, I'm still a scumbag. just a nice one.
Right. Well, like, look, I can have you on for hours, man, and
yeah.
I definitely I want to cut this one short, so I can make it easier for me on the back end to edit, and also make it easier for my listeners to listen. But before I let you go, how's your show doing, man?
It's doing all right. We relaunched about a month ago, a couple weeks ago, and I've been trying to get content and guests and listeners. So if any of your fans want to check my show out, it's called Sweet Dog and Friends. It's on SoundCloud exclusively, mostly because I'm lazy and don't know how to create an RSS feed. But the plan is, the more listeners I get, the more effort I'll put into, you know, getting on the other platforms. But it's
that's real. That's being real honest with yourself right there.
Yeah. and it's been growing. Like, I used to get no listeners. I used to put out episodes and get like 3 listens, and the few dozen I get now really make me happy, and people give me real feedback, and we got a fun way that we handle things, and the people that are listening like it. So that's what I'm really important. You know, I'm big on creating content that people actually like, because you understand, you don't want to do something that, you know, they're not going to come back. And you don't want to do something that you don't like. You don't want to change your format to appeal to stuff that you don't really care about. So my show's a very low stakes, high reward environment. We just try to, you know, have fun. And really, for the past couple of weeks, I've been realizing that it's kind of, one of my nicknames is the Black Fraser Crane. And it's kind of because I'm doing therapy for my friends. Like, they come to me and they talk for an hour or so. I just, you know, I unravel their brain in some way. I try to get them to talk about stuff that they might not talk about every day.
Well, I'll go ahead and say you definitely influenced this interview, because it was more, I listened to a couple of episodes of your show, and this interview between you and I right now is more similar to the format of your show than it is mine. So, and anyone listening, if you like how this was, I know it's a little bit long. I'm gonna try my best to make it bearable. But if you like the format, you like kind of like the freestyle, is the conversation style. That's essentially what Sweet Dog's show is. So definitely check that out.
There's no prep work in my show. You just show up. the prep work is like, yo, what kind of beers you want? And they come through.
Well, that's dope, especially when you add beers to it. But hey, look, Sweet Dog. Let's end this, man. Otherwise, the whole show will be this interview.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. You have a good one, dog.
You too.
Hey, Anton, thanks a lot, Sweet Dog. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to check out his SoundCloud and his podcast, Sweet Dog and Friends. I'll actually be on his show in November, so I'm really excited about that. So definitely tune in. I'll have more information as the date approaches. but I will be a guest on his show in November, and I'm really looking forward to being on the show. So thanks again, Sweet Dog. I really appreciate it. And as you can hear, he talked about a few different topics there. One of my favorite points that he made was letting you know, like, hey, look, it's okay to say that it's not for you, right? That the dating the parent thing is not for you. It's okay. So really, really cool points there. Again, shout out to Anton. Now, our next guest, Dell talks about what it's like from a different perspective. Dell talks about what it's like being a person dating the parent. And he goes a few different things. You can hear in Dell's conversation that there were a lot of things that he was anxious or hesitant about at first. And even, it's very important that it's not just an adjusting period when a relationship first starts. As you can see, he's almost half a year in and he's still adjusting to things. It's a constant adjusting period. So one thing that I really like about one of the points that Dell's going to make is that they both, him and his partner, both put in effort to make it work. It's not just one-sided. It's not just him accommodating the parent. It's the parent accommodating him as well. So definitely check this out. One of my favorite interviews to date. Here's Dell, and here's some of what he has to say.
Everybody, welcome back. This time around, we got somebody who's been listening for quite some time and is even known to send me, he likes to call them essays on feedback for shows that he's listened to. And he's a good friend of mine. We have Dell. Dell, how are you?
I'm pretty good today, brother. How about yourself?
Great, man. I'm excited to have you on. I can't wait to hear some of your thoughts about this topic, and I'm looking forward to letting the world hear your thoughts.
Definitely good to be here, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem, dude. So this week's topic is dating with kids, and oftentimes it only gets viewed from one angle. It gets viewed from the, person with the kid's perspective, and there's a lot of attention on the person with the kid. And we usually hear from parents who say how hard it is being, whether they're a single parent or they have an ample amount of help from the kid's other parent. We often hear from that person's perspective. We don't really usually hear from the person who's not the parent, who's going into the situation. And it's to my understanding, you're in a situation like that now, right?
Yes, that's correct. I've been dating this woman for about 5 months now, and she has a 3-year-old son.
So talk to me a little bit about that experience, especially from a male's perspective. We often get a lot of flack for, not wanting to pursue a young lady with a kid. So kind of a two-part question for you. First things first is, did you know she had a kid before you got into a relationship, before you, started dating and being romantic? And second part of that question is, were you intimidated at all? Did it kind of scare you a bit?
Well, when we first started, talking and getting to know each other, she did express to me that she had a child. And she told me from day one that her child came first. Before we even started to pursue a relationship or anything, she wanted me to meet her child first. So I knew that she did have one. And as far as being, intimidated, it was a bit of a change because I was always the type that was out every day until 5 a.m. partying with friends. But now I'm not really doing that anymore because most of the time I'm with her. And if she's with me, then we're not going to be out. So it definitely was a bit of a change and something I had to adjust to.
Now, what sort of advice would you give? Because that's pretty intimidating. I actually had another guest who spoke from the other perspective because he was the one with the kids. And, he outlined some things that he had to deal with when, dealing with someone who didn't have kids. But because you have a unique perspective of, going through what you went through initially during the beginning stages of the relationship, what type of advice would you give somebody who is interested in someone, but they're also a parent?
Well, the first thing I would have to say is you have to be open-minded with everything. You can't go into it with expectations of how you believe things will be because anything can change, especially when you're dating someone with a child. You have to realize you're on their time and child's time. So you can't do everything you want to do when you want to do it. You have to work around their schedule. Now, it's also, like I said, it can be intimidating, but you can't go in thinking, oh, I'm going to be this child's other parent now. I have this role to fill. You only have to really fill that role when asked. Like, you're not going in to be the other parent. You are dating their parent. So you can't just go in trying to tell the child what to do and take that authority role.
I know there are a lot of people who, speaking of that authoritative role, there are a lot of people who don't know really how to approach that, and it's always an awkward conversation to have because we all have this idea on how someone should get raised, right? We all have our own paradigm on, you know, what's a good parent, what's a bad parent, what should be acceptable, and everyone's favorite phrase, they start off, well, if it was my kid, if it was my kid, if it was my kid, et cetera, et cetera. And everyone kind of like has this predetermined mindset on, you know, what a parent's relationship with a kid should be. And they oftentimes, when they get into a situation similar to the situation that you're in, they may see something that they disagree with. How do you think is the best way to approach that conversation? Because on one end of it, you know, you have no right. That's like not even in your wheelhouse. But on the other end of it, if it's something that may affect you and your relationship with the child's parent, it may need to be a conversation that needs to be had. So, what are your thoughts on a situation like that where you may have to have a conversation with the parent about their relationship with the child? Do you think that's like, you know, over somebody stepping over their, you know, stepping on somebody's toes, they're stepping out, they're going outside of their area of responsibility, or do you think it's a conversation that needs to be held eventually?
Well, honestly, I'm pretty much still dealing with that myself, to be honest, because even when, like, I met her family, I was given permission, like, hey, if he's acting out, you have permission to basically tell him stop, like to tell him what to do. But I personally don't feel that it's my place to do so, especially as we've only been dating a few months. But I don't feel that you really have a say in how they raise their child. If you are just entering this relationship, you can't just go in and automatically start calling the shots, especially if the child doesn't really know you, so they're not going to listen to you. If you go in just trying to say, hey, stop doing this, or hey, do this, then the parent may take a sort of mama bear role and be very protective. Now, I use mama bear very loosely, but be protective, and they will get upset that you are trying to change how they're doing things. So if the time comes where you need to have that conversation, it needs to be approached very delicately. You can't just go in doing things. You can offer suggestions, but to straight up say, hey, you need to do this, you need to change how you're parenting, that would not be the best thing to do.
I agree. I think it's so tricky to a degree because on one end, you can see something like we all have life experiences, and that's usually what we compare things to. Unless it's a fact like, hey, if you drop something, it will fall because of gravity. Generally speaking, it's a very subjective viewpoint on things, but we all have something that we can relate to. For example, hey, when I was growing up, my mom allowed me to do this as a reward for good behavior because I did this. Or, hey, when I was growing up, my father disciplined me for this because this happened. So we always have, and I turned out this way, or my cousin turned out this way, or my best friend turned out this way. And we always have, or maybe we work in a daycare, so we have different, experiences and perceptions. And it can be really, really tough. It's such a, tough conversation to have because it could be something legitimate, like, hey, you could be a psychologist. You could be a child psychologist and understand child psychology in a way that a parent doesn't. And you could say, hey, it's really important for you to have your child sleep with you in your bed up until this point because this helps with intimacy issues and blah, 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 blah. But then at the same time, you don't want to come off as overbearing, like, hey, I know more than you, or hey, I'm better suited to raise your child than you are. And I think it can be really, really difficult. So what do you think takes precedence? Do you think it's the authority given by the parent? So if the mother or the father gives the authority to the person that they're dating, like, hey, you have the authority to do this, or do you think it's a time thing? Like after 6 months, after a year and a half, this is what you should be doing in regards to the child. So do you think it's you have to wait for like permission, like have the conversation authority to get authority, or do you think it's more like a certain amount of time has to go by?
I honestly think it's a little bit of both, but more so the permission aspect. Because you could be with someone for 6 months or a year, and if you try to discipline their child, they may take their stance of, don't yell at my child, don't do. A matter of parents says it's okay. If they say, hey, if they're doing something wrong, stop them. That's when you have the okay, like, all right, I will correct them if I see something. But don't just go in thinking, okay, I've been dating this person 6 months, they're not acting up, I'm going to tell them about themselves. Because that could go the wrong way very quickly. So I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest.
How much of a factor between the parent and the child's relationship do you think will have on the perception of the person dating them? Do you think it could cause the relationship to steer in the wrong way if the person going into the relationship sees certain things that they just before? For example, when you're just dating someone who isn't a parent, you only have to worry about how you view them as a person, and you only have to worry about what your relationship is like with them, just you two. When you go into a relationship and the person's a parent, you may find things that find you more attractive to that person because you're like, hey, I really admire and respect the way that you deal with your child. And the opposite could be true, where it's, hey, I really like you as a person, but I see the way you handle your child, you deal with your child, and I don't like it. I'm unattracted to that. So do you think in the sense that you're almost not even just dating the person, you're also dating the parent? If that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I said from day one, she told me that she had a child and they were a package deal. And before we actually made anything official, like we were going on dates to getting to know each other, but before we actually began a relationship, she made sure that I met her child so she could see how I interacted with him. Now, we went out to Friendly's one day for lunch, so it was a public setting, seeing how he was in public and if I could handle it, as well as how I dealt with things. Like even to this day, we still will go somewhere or just hang out, and it's still a matter of like seeing how I am. And that's honestly one thing she said that she did like really about me, because I never had experience with children before, but like her kid loves me and I'm very interactive with them and patient and everything. So that definitely plays a huge factor. If you are compatible with the child, then more often than not, you are not compatible with the person you are trying to pursue, because the child always comes first.
Yeah, that's something really, really like I mentioned earlier. I think a lot of sympathy, and rightfully so, in most cases, goes towards the parent, where it's like, hey, the parent has to deal with a lot having a kid, et cetera, et cetera. But I do feel there are some things that get overlooked from the person who isn't the parent, their perspective too. And there's some difficult things that they have to deal with and experience, especially if they're in a situation where they never had to deal with kids on that level before. One of which you touched on earlier in the conversation is when, you have to realize like, hey, the kid comes first. Now, how difficult was it for you? Because I'm sure every relationship that you've been in and every romantic or intimate, relationship that you've had with a young lady, you were used to doing things a certain way. You could come over anytime you wanted to if they were in a situation, if they were in a living situation that allowed that, or, you could invite them over your place anytime you wanted to. If your living situation allowed that, you can go out and stay as late as you wanted to, stay out as late as you wanted to, and You can use any type of language that you wanted. You can watch anything you wanted, on TV. You didn't have to be mindful with certain programs, things like that. Things that you had to sort of adjust to when you now have a parent and their child. So how difficult was it for you personally? Because I'm sure it wasn't just a light switch where you were able to just turn it on and go, okay, I have to be this way now.
Like, personally, it's still something that will affect me every now and then, because I used to be the one to go to the bar and play darts and then go to the after hours Sunday through Friday. So for that to change, now I'm out maybe once a week, twice a week. And half the time she'll be with me for an hour and then go home. And sometimes I'll be out for an hour and then go home with her. So it's definitely something to adjust to, because like you said, it's not just a light switch. You can't just flip it on and off. It's something gradually, day by day, you have to accept. Like, if you really want to pursue this person, then that lifestyle necessarily won't be the best thing for you to do. So it definitely was difficult for me, but in my opinion, definitely worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a character development opportunity. And it's definitely a character developing experience, because you get to see not too many people have the opportunity or the challenge of dealing with a child until they have their own. And it's different from, I would say it's even different from working in like a daycare or working in being like maybe a pediatrician, for example, where it's a professional aspect. And although you do get a nurturing tendency around children, at the end of the day, it is work. But when you are dating or involved with someone romantically and they also have a child, it forces you to be a different person than you've always been. And it can definitely be challenging in some areas and very rewarding in others. I had a friend who felt very, very guilty, and he was a little ashamed because he was dating a young lady who had children, more than one. And after dating her for a little bit, he realized that it wasn't for him. And he's a very upfront guy. One thing I admire and respect about him a lot is he's a very upfront guy. He didn't really want to give her a BS reason. So he just straight up said, like, hey, I'm used to a certain lifestyle. I'm used to certain things. And I don't think I'm ready to date a parent yet. And he straight up told her that. And he caught a lot of flack from that young lady's parents and that young lady's family, and especially that young lady's friends, and even some of his friends, because they said, oh, that's a messed up reason. Me personally, I view it as like, hey, you're being really honest with yourself and you're being honest with the person that you're with. What advice would you give to somebody who may feel like guilty or ashamed as to like, hey, they know it's not for them, but they feel like they can't say it because it's like, it's not like the politically correct thing to say. It gets viewed as this negative thing if you don't want to be involved with a parent. What's the best way to go about dealing with something like that in your opinion?
In my opinion, although you may catch flack for it for a while, if you're not feeling it, then it is best to let that person know early, because do more harm than good to try to stick it out and force yourself to do something you don't really want to do. If you know that you're unhappy and it's not what you want, all that's going to do is lead the significant other on as a child. So especially when the child gets attached, it's going to be even harder to, in a sense, walk away from that, because you've been hanging on for so long trying to force yourself to be what you're not. Like, honestly, if you're not ready to be in a relationship with someone with a child, then you shouldn't be, because in the end, it's going to do way more harm than good.
Do you ever think about that? You mentioned something that's really important. I actually experienced a lot when I was growing up. My mom was actually not with my father when I was raised. So she was dating. She was dating different men, and I actually grew very, very fond of a lot of the men that she was dating. And, some I never got a chance to meet. I didn't even know. Some I was too young to even realize that they were dating. Like I would see them a bit, and they would never stay at the house. They would just go out. And I would just think like, oh, it's my mom's friend. You know, I was too young to really put two and two together. But there were some guys who were around for quite some time, and even in some cases would stay the night over. And, you know, some cases I would hang out with the guy, and there's one guy in particular who was really into martial arts, and he and I used to actually like train together, and it was pretty cool. And, you know, then next thing you knew, something didn't work out, whether it wasn't a good fit, or my mom was kind of, you know, a little crazy, so she could have chased him off, or, you know, whatever the case may be. And, you know, now I didn't see this guy around anymore. And, you know, even to this day, who knows what that could have done or may have done to my psychology growing up on, you know, the different men that came around. You mentioned, you know, admitting very early on, like, hey, if it's not going to work, because you don't want to have that child get attached to you, and now you're leaving, and now that child has a void that they have to fill. And now that parent has to explain to the child, you know, because the child's going to ask, like, hey, you know, where's Mr. Dell, or, you know, whatever the child calls you. And now they have to explain, like, oh, how do you explain that to a child? You know, it's so difficult. So do you ever think about that? You know, right now, arguably, you're in a puppy love. One would say you're still in the puppy love phase of your relationship, where you may have had some challenges, but 5 months in, 6 months in, things are still swell, right? You guys still maybe, of course, I don't know for a fact, but maybe you didn't have that huge challenge yet. Maybe you didn't have that huge argument yet. Maybe you didn't have that huge disagreement yet. Maybe, you know, you didn't have that moment where she caught you doing something, or you caught her doing something that neither one of you liked, and you had to have that conversation. Do you ever think about that? Like, wow, will we get into this huge argument, or what if it doesn't work out? And then you still have this relationship with her child. Do you ever think like, wow, you know, I might feel bad, you know, cutting it off, and I really love this kid. You know, I'm really here for this kid, but it's not going to work out for me and the child's mother. Do you ever think about stuff like that?
I have had that thought before. Like, we have gotten into a couple disagreements that did get a bit heated, where I question, like, is this going to end? Like, it didn't, but I did have that thought of, that's going to hurt all three of us. Because even now, Dell coming over, when's Dell coming back, and constantly asks about me. Like, if she will get on the phone just to say hi. So that thought has crossed my mind, but fortunately I don't see that happening anytime soon, if ever. But it's definitely something that is not easy to deal with, especially if you're in the position in which you already had to walk away. But fortunately, I haven't had those issues.
Oh, that's good, man. And I know it can be really challenging dealing with thoughts like that, because you almost feel guilty, because, you know, like you mentioned earlier, the young lady that you're dating said that, like, hey, we're a package deal. You know, you can't have one without the other. So the same rules apply towards feelings and emotions. You know, you start to love both of them eventually. You're not just loving just one and not the other. And it gets to a point where if you have an issue with one, it makes it difficult with the other party. You know, the kid might do something disrespectful, and the kid might rub you the wrong way, and you don't know how to deal with that. And now you got to bring it to the mother's attention, or, you know, you and the mother might be going through something difficult, and now you have to explain to the child why you may not be over for a week or so. You know, it can be really difficult, but I admire and respect anyone who is willing to go through that, because it's an extremely challenging situation. But I think just like with most challenges in life, it can be a very rewarding experience, and you get to see a different side of yourself that you, in some cases, didn't even know existed. So, kudos to you, Del, for hanging in there, man, and kudos to you for just being happy with the situation. There are a lot of people who would trade their position with you, and there are a lot of people who are currently in your situation and they don't quite know how to deal with it. I know you're still learning, but kudos for you for definitely taking the challenge head on.
Yes, thank you, man. And clearly I won't know how to handle a lot of situations, but if I don't understand something, I'll ask. If she wants to discipline him a certain way, I'll ask, like, why did you do this? Or what happened to lead to this? Like, I will never try to tell her to do something, but it's all observation, it's all learning. So in time, it'll definitely work itself out.
That's good, man. Well, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to finish this up, but, well, Del, thank you so much for some of your time, man. I really appreciate it. I think it's really important for people to hear every perspective. I'm actually in the middle of listening to an audiobook right now called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And one of the things that he talked about was paradigm shifting. And I loved it. So far, it's my favorite part of the book because we're given these maps in life on how things are supposed to be. And a map is just a representation of reality. It's not reality. And oftentimes we get caught up on our map and we're not actually looking at the actual terrain itself. And sometimes in life we have to go through different things or hear different things in order for our paradigm to shift. And I think it's really important for not only to hear from the parent's perspective, but to also hear from the person who's not the parent, and to hear from their perspective and some of the challenges that they may go through. I think one of the downsides in living in the current age that we live in right now is, in my opinion, we're in the age of political correctness, where everyone wants to be nice and everyone doesn't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and everyone is just super PC all of the time. And I think oftentimes, like I mentioned earlier, everyone is automatically on the parent side because it's very difficult to be a parent. Obviously, I'm not speaking from experience, but I know some of the things that my mom had to go through raising me. I know some of the things that my dad had to go through raising me. And I know some of the things that, you know, my aunts and uncles go through and my grandmother, et cetera. So being a parent is absolutely hard, but there's always an other side of the coin. There's always a different end of the spectrum. And I think it's very important for people to hear some of the challenges that come along with that. Because just because you're not a parent doesn't mean that everything's all sunshine and roses. So I really appreciate you coming on, giving me some of your time and explaining that there are difficulties, there are challenges. And hopefully I can have you on in the future, man, to discuss another topic. I know you'll have an opinion about it.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you for having me, man. Been listening for a while. It's an honor to finally be on the show. And don't worry, you'll still be receiving my essays.
Right on, man. Well, Del, you take care of yourself, man.
All right, thanks, brother. You too.
Thanks a lot, Del. Really appreciate it. As you can hear, even towards the end there, Del also talked about, hey, look, if this isn't for you, it is okay to say so. Don't let people make you feel guilty, because it'll be even worse when you find yourself 1 month, 2 months, 3 months into the relationship, and maybe the child starts to get a liking to you, and then you just dip out and you peace out because you realize you're not ready for that stage of life. So don't feel bad if you got to dip out. And if you do decide to stick around, it says a lot about your character, and it shows that, hey, maybe you are ready for that stage of life, and hey, maybe you are ready to have a child of your own. So I really appreciate these two interviews. I think it offered a lot of perspective. If anyone's been listening for a very long time, since episode 1, you know, one of my main goals is to bring perspective, to have a paradigm shift, if you will. And I can't wait to have a conversation with some of you all to help me understand different sides and different perspectives, and hopefully I can help you do the same thing. So I'm really looking forward to that. Speaking of things that I'm looking forward to, I was looking forward to this for quite some time, to announce the winner of the ITIYL gift card giveaway, and the winner is Pam. Pam, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for the loyalty, and thank you so much for sticking around. Pam always has something to say about the show. She has ideas, she has suggestions, and she reached out to me and told me what her favorite episode was. So I really appreciate Pam. I see her almost every day, and she always puts a smile on my face when she talks about the show, and I really appreciate Pam's delivery. Here's what she said for her entry. She says, hey, one of my favorite episodes so far has been episode 20, your first therapy session. Since I am studying public health, I've respected how open you were about your mental health status and seeking therapy. This was also a favorite because I honestly learned something new about our workplace that I didn't know before, how they help with providing mental health services. It was also cool to hear you discuss a new event too, with Hulk Hogan's statement and all that surrounding it. I just like hearing people's opinions on news topics like that. So thank you, Pam. I really appreciate it. That was one of the most difficult things that I've ever had to deal with, is the whole mental health thing. And I really appreciate you letting me know, among others, letting me know that it's okay to feel the way that I did, and that it's okay for me to seek out help. So thank you, Pam. Congratulations on your gift card. I'll be in contact with you so you can let me know what gift card you want. And again, that's a $20 gift card to anything you want. And since I see you in person, I can actually hand deliver it. So that's pretty cool. Other than that, just an update on what's been going on with me, guys. So a lot. So I took, for those of you who don't know, I am a Mason. And if you don't know what a Mason is, it's basically a nonprofit fraternity. It's, fraternity, nonprofit organization. And we do a lot within the community. And just like any other fraternity, it promotes brotherhood and makes good men better. And I recently accepted a leadership position, or I got elected, I should say, to a leadership position within my particular lodge. And that's taking up a lot of my time for my specific role in particular. If you know me, and if you know me for quite some time, I take leadership very, very seriously. It's one thing to be a manager. It's another thing to be a leader. And this role is definitely a huge turning point in my life. And as a result, it definitely takes a priority. Masonry takes a priority anyway, but it definitely takes a priority. So as much as I love the podcast, as much as I love talking to you guys every week, the Masonry does take a priority. So sometimes things like a hobby, things like gaming, things like, hanging out with friends, things like the podcast, unfortunately do have to take a backseat when there's business involved. That goes for work, and that also goes for Masonry. Now, speaking of work, I've been working a little bit more lately just to take care of some extra financial obligations, including Masonry and including some other goals that I have. So I've been working a whole lot more, and it can get draining, and it can the time that I use to dedicate towards the show has gone towards work. And although I do feel a little guilty about it, at the same time, unfortunately, at this point in my life, the show does not pay for my goals and my milestones. The show does not help me invest in my future at the moment. So I do have to dedicate myself towards work a little bit more when it comes to increasing my financial goals and my financial milestones. I have a lot of trips coming up. I plan on going to Texas in November. I'm going to New York in November. I also have a birthday in November that I plan on hanging out with some friends with. And although I'm not doing anything extreme, I do want to have some fun. I'm also working towards something pretty cool, and I did want to talk to you all about it. This is something that's going on in my personal life, and I can't wait to talk to. I've spoken to some of you about it, and I can't wait to talk to you others about it in the future. So if you listen, speaking of episode 20 and Pam bringing it up, if you listen to it, I had a difficult thing to overcome in reference to work, and I got really stressed out. And I reached out to a mentor of mine, and my mentor told me, he gave me some advice that he said he wish he would have listened to and taken 10 years ago. And that's to become a certified talent developer, get your talent development certification, to which I'm very, very passionate about, but I had no idea it existed. So I'm really looking forward to getting certified in talent development. Now, just to break that down a little bit, and I'll talk more about it next week, I promise. But just to break this down a little bit, talent development. So talent development surrounds things like coaching, training delivery, talent acquisition, things like that. And you can actually become certified in that. There are certain areas of competency that you need to be proficient in order to become the best talent developer that you can be. And I am going to pursue these things. So I'm saving up money now to pay for the examination, and I can't wait to get this certification. I didn't go to college. I don't have a degree. So this is the closest thing that I've had to continuing my education and professional development outside of work. And I'm really excited because it kind of brings a little bit of purpose back to my life. and I can't wait to see where this takes me, whether in my current career or outside. And anyone who knows me knows I'm very, very passionate about people. I'm very, very passionate about talent development, and the things that I've done in the past when it comes to training and coaching are some of the best moments in my life. And anyone that I've touched personally and helped, whether it be help them continue their career, whether it help them provide with their families, whether it helps their professional development and growth, it's definitely something I want to be a part of. Again, like I said, it's one thing to be a manager, it's another thing to be a leader. And a leader invests in the people around them instead of investing in themselves. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about the talent development field. One of the best quotes that I've ever heard is, if you think you know everything, you don't know anything. And there's always more to learn. There's always more ways to grow. And I'm really looking forward to this. So the exam cost for me will be $400. And the next examination dates, I believe, are either in February or March of next year. And I'm shooting for being in that class to get that certification. So if anyone listening has any information surrounding grants or any information surrounding certifications, feel free to hit me up. If you have my number personally, call me, text me. If you don't, there are several ways to hit me up. They will all be in the description of the show. And I'm really looking forward to this stage in my life, everyone. I'm a little nervous, I'm a little anxious, but more than anything, I'm very, very excited. So, with that being said, I look forward to speaking to you all about not only today's topics, but hopefully the certification as well. Like always, everyone, I gotta go. I gotta get ready for work. Thank you for sticking around another week. And as always, I'll keep talking if you'll listen. Take care.